My chosen auteur is Quentin Tarantino, who is known for films such as the Kill Bill trilogy, Django Unchained, and Pulp Fiction. Most of his films use heavy amounts of explicit violence, however this is done in a very stylistic manner which can also be almost be comical at times. The violence is often justified through the use of the revenge plot, which is a common theme in his films. He often uses an underdog who has been wronged yet manages to overcome the odds, such as the bride in Kill Bill who struggles to exact revenge on a titular character and her former love interest, Bill. This violence has often been criticised as gratuitous, however, and many people have called for some of his films to be banned. Most notably, his feature-length debut, Reservoir Dogs, was banned certification in the UK for a time. I believe Quentin Tarantino is an auteur, as each of his films has an incredibly distinct style that is recognisable to many people who have watched his films. This is assisted by the fact that he often writes his own screenplays, which allow him to reflect his vision even further. Even in screenplays he has written for other films that he has not directed, such as Natural Born Killers, directed by Oliver Stone, his vision and style manages to shine through to some extent. Furthermore, he makes use of a few signature shots which make his films his own. My personal favourite of these is the shot from a perspective of a car boot. This can be seen most notably in Pulp Fiction when the two protagonists are having a discussion, and while he did not invent this shot, he popularised it. In a 2012 poll of directors by Sight and Sound Film magazine, Tarantino listed his favourite films, which included Jaws, Taxi Driver, and his favourite film, The Good, the Bad and the Ugly. He also mentioned the Japanese film Battle Royale as one of his influences, which I believe has had the most clear influence on his filmmaking due to the stylistic violence shown. Quentin Tarantino repeatedly used the same actors for similar roles, such as using Samuel L. Jackson to portray powerful and in-control characters in films such as Pulp Fiction. Furthermore, they are known to be friends outside of their filmmaking work. Tarantino often also uses Tim Roth to portray villainous characters as he fits the stereotype of that classic English villain. Tarantino often uses movement during violent scenes to create more motion within the film, which makes the action scene more alive. Furthermore, the camera often cuts away during especially gory moments and cuts back to the result of the violence. Another mark of a Quentin Tarantino film is his use of a non-linear narrative, which can be seen in the majority of his films. This often disorients the viewer, as it is often unclear when in the film's timeline a scene is, as Tarantino often jumps to random points. This allows the viewer to compare the evolution of characters throughout the film. As I mentioned earlier, Tarantino often uses underdogs as principal characters. As well as being underdogs in terms of the narrative, they are also often portrayed by oppressed social groups, which further emphasises the point of them being the underdog in the narrative. An example of this is the film Django Unchained, which shows a black slave revolting, overpowering, and exacting revenge against his oppressors. A similar narrative is followed in the film Inglourious Basterds, which follows a small unit of elite Jewish soldiers who go into Nazi territory to exact revenge against those who had wronged them. While Tarantino's films are often portrayed as negative by a lot of mainstream media, many of them have developed a cult following and are often hugely popular, with Tarantino often being called one of the most influential directors, as well as being considered one of the best at his craft. To conclude, I believe Tarantino, on top of him being one of my personal favourite directors, is one of the greatest auteurs, as there is a very distinct stylistic flourish shown throughout his films, wherein every aspect of his film has been considered by him, from dialogue to camera movement. His films, while controversial, have led to him being an icon in filmmaking, and his films becoming classics.